We are live again, and to make absolutely sure that everybody understands what is going on here, these conversations that Dave and I are having are just that, conversations. This cannot be seen as advice in any way, shape, or form, because we are talking about the emerging techs and we're talking about so many different topics that we do not want you to think that what we put forward here is advice in any way, shape, or form. And also with the previous videos that I've done, it's just my personal take on trademarks. This is my personal take on trademarks and emerging tech. This is Dave's personal opinion on trademarks and emerging tech. So just be aware that none of these videos that are in this channel can be taken as advice.
Yeah, just to take it one step further to Celeste's kind introduction, we're just like two friends having a conversation about how the world is shifting and changing with different technologies, how that's going to impact on traditional routes of doing things. Now, whether that's a trademark, how you bank, how you work in insurance, you know, those industries have been around for many, many, many years. The stuff I talk about is relatively new, although the technology isn't, but the way it's been applied. And you'll often hear me refer to use cases. That's basically straightforward enough. It's how these things can be used. And some of the time, that might not even be a thing yet. But when I'm looking at certain bits, everything, there's risk in everything. And from an early age, since I can remember, I've always been trained on think about the risk, think about the asset. The asset, whether it's a positive or a negative asset, is a risk, period. And you must look at ways of protecting it, no matter what it is. A lot of people will think about costs, time. I get that. I completely understand it. If it's not affordable for you, it basically is not affordable for you yet. But reach out and speak to someone like Celeste. She's taught me masses. Every day I learn something and I think, crikey, didn't even consider that. I don't know everything. Nobody on the planet does. There are people.
I don't know everything about trademarks. And as will become very apparent in this conversation about trademarks and emerging tech, there is a need for updating the legislation. That is without a doubt really, really imperative. And this is just going to move faster and faster. So we need a way to speed the process up, so to speak, so that we don't lag too much behind, because these technologies are fascinating on the one hand and a little bit scary on the other. And the fact of the matter is we have to stay open and not let us be scared by it, because it's so easy to be frightened out of our wits. And the thing is, when we're scared about something or scared of something, we freeze. So that is not a very conducive way of being. And I talk from personal experience, because I've been bloody fucking afraid of a lot of things. And then there's stuff like deep fake videos that are emerging like that, banned, and you think, wow, are we making ourselves redundant here?
Yeah.
You know, and I almost wrote that, but I didn't want to write that. So that's why I wrote, I don't know what to say here, because I can see advantages and I can see disadvantages to it.
You're right. I mean, the case that Celeste is talking about is a created ban through artificial intelligence. Now, we're both old enough to remember the changes in music when the traditional route was, you know, you'd have a four-piece band, singer, guitar player, bass player, guy at the back playing drums, or a girl, whatever. That bit's kind of irrelevant, but you get the drift. So there was a four-piece act. I mean, the most famous one ever is the Beatles, without question. They come along, they produce loads of music, loads of content out there, they make a fortune, they get older, they start doing things different, some move into retirement, some die, you know, this is natural progression. But what they did do was at some point protect their assets. However wealthy they are, they would have protected their assets. And
because they're intelligent enough to know that what they've created, it has value.
Exactly. Now, when you get someone of, you know, I'm not saying all teenagers think like this, but I was a teenager once, and so Celeste, you don't think that far forward. So you produce a band, you get very, very big. And nowadays you've got people on hand to advise you. Whether that's right or not is to be seen. But you can get advice and someone will go, yeah, actually protect your name. go out and get that done. Here's a list of people that we're talking with. Let's have the meeting and tie it all up. You'll also get others that are sort of, I also remember going back to the Beatle analogy, when things started to go through the 70s where we had the glam rock and we had great acts like David Bowie and T-Rex, then Queen come along, then the punk scene hit with the Sex Pistols and the Ramones in the States. And then we came into the 80s and it was the techno thing. So music now, if you've got an iPad or an iPhone, you can make any music you like. Is that creative? Yes. Is it clever? Yes. It's expressing what's in there on your bit of paper. Your bit of paper in this case is the hardware that you're using. Is it as clever as Brian May doing a guitar solo? No, because he spent years doing that. And I play guitar and I know how difficult that is.
I tried to learn playing guitar and trying to press the
strings on the fret.
Strings, yeah, it was so painful. I was like, I'm not bloody doing this. This is too fucking painful. Sorry, I swear. So I didn't want to. That was one thing. Then my little brother, when he reached a certain age, he got a set of drums, and I was playing those a little bit, but I never learned it. And my uncle, who's really good at pianist, he tried to teach me as a child whenever my aunt and he looked after me to play the piano, and it just didn't stick for some reason.
This is where the world's come to, because if you think, we use Brian May, he's obviously a very well-known guitarist. Yeah, if you go Brian May equals famous violin player from back in the day, you know, it could be anyone that comes to mind. I'm not big into classical music, but I understand it. All right, a violin's got 4 strings, a guitar's got 6, or can have 12, or a bass has got 4. But the skill sets are similar because you're making a string make that sound. Yeah. But because the guitar has got more technology behind it, that technically, when it came out, was emerging tech. And anything that you apply to, even the wheel that we all take for granted. Can you imagine what it was like the week before the wheel came out? How hard. Those poor horses and goats and everything else had to carry everything. No longer are required to do that. So they can do what they like being doing. That's being a horse or a goat. You know, they weren't created to carry us. Neither was a camel, but we've used
a horse certainly isn't. Yeah. We think that a horse is created to carry us, but actually it isn't.
Yeah, well that's it. And you know, if you then go back to those days and replace horse with the car, the van, the lorry, etc., different case altogether. They are designed to do exactly that. Load up, take stuff. That's what they're there for. You know, these smart engineers that build something go to people like Celeste and say, I need to patent this, copyright it, put a trademark on it, etc., etc. Can you do all of the above? Or if you can't do one, let you sort of organise that if that's okay. So that's where we are with what was then and what is now. But the way that the digital world is moving so quickly, because of the nature of it being digital, of course, people in Celeste's position have got more work to do than ever, I would guess, because it's ever changing, isn't it? You know, there's things that come along each day. I mean, we were discussing an article about the handbag company. What were they called again? Is it
Hermes?
Hermes. Where they were talking about, I think it was misrepresentation. There was a lot of language in there. They got their case proved. I think they got some kind of financial reward, but
130,000.
Yeah, about
133,000 American dollars in damages. And the artists who created those Meta Birkins, as they're referred to. So Hermes has this iconic handbag that is called a Birkin handbag, and it's their most iconic thing, and it's really, really high end. And you have to be on a wait list to even get one. And so this guy comes along and creates NFTs that look exactly like them, considers it to be a cash cow for him, which can't be in his advantage when you go to court, and also then sells them on the blockchain. And of course, when you have a trademark that is so well known as Hermes, they actually enjoy a different type of protection than I do with my trademark, because their trademark has been around for so long. They have been very, very fierce in the protection of it, you know, fighting off infringers and all that. that, or and that's what people need to understand. You cannot leave your trademark alone. You have to monitor it 24/7, 365, because otherwise things like that will happen where people get away with creating something, and if you're not on your toes, you may have financial loss. Of course, they are fierce about protecting their trademark and their exclusivity. So when somebody comes along and creates something that actually rides on their tailcoat, they will not appreciate that. So of course they get solicitors that are able to argue their case. And we have the whole NFT thing, and your point of view, I think, is that these people don't understand what NFTs are. I don't know if I know enough, but I'll let you talk for a moment about this.
And before I do, the question I've got at the moment is, currently, as we sit today, how did the entity that took said person to court find out about the infringement in the first place? You mentioned about monitoring. So how is the trademark monitored?
So somebody like me can monitor your trademark by doing searches in the trademark databases.
Right.
And then when the results come back, we go through that and we assess whether or not this is an actual threat.
Okay. Is it manually done by humans at the moment?
Yes, it is.
Regardless of the size of the entity?
Yes.
Right.
I think that it will most likely be, because I did this for a while I was in Denmark. After I'd finished studying the law, I was working as an intern at a law firm, and this was what I did. I was monitoring trademarks for the firm. And whenever something got flagged up, I then had to assess whether I felt that it was an actual threat or not. And even in some cases, I was like, yeah, I think this is a threat. And then the solicitor would say, no.
That's something I just wanted to understand because of what I'm about to say. And I didn't want to sort of misrepresent it, if that's the right phrase to use. Because to me, from an outsider looking in, that's a lot of work and a lot of process that,
it is.
Let's face it, eventually will get replaced from the dreaded AI. It's going to come and take that away, because if
it might actually, I think for me, because I don't have a huge law firm, so for me, I think that could be an advantage to me. Having AI do that for me, so that I don't waste precious time where I could be talking to people, helping them either find a trademark that can become registered with my academy, the unique branded blueprint, or actually registering their trademark.
I'm looking at the bigger picture. This is not obviously just about what you do per se, but if you had the entire market cap, so every bit of business that could possibly be done is done, and I know that's an ongoing thing, but as it stands at the moment, we were discussing this the other day. You tell me how big the marketplace is, and it's vast. In order to manage that properly, you need a lot of people, so there's probably a shortage. However big your law firm is, there's no law firm that I'm aware of that employs 1 million people. And I bet that's not even enough either. So if you had a piece of kit that could do the work of not 1 million, but 1 billion, all you need to do is have 7 of those and you've got that covered. Now, I'm talking very matter of fact about this, because this is all about how data and information is managed, in terms of, I've got it, it needs to go somewhere, and that somewhere needs to make a decision. There aren't enough people to do that, so that needs to be groups. There needs to be a process put in where, like you've highlighted, whether it is a case or not, because the people that take the actions are only interested in the times when it is a case. So if there was something that could do that heavy lifting for them, they haven't got to worry about having thousands of people doing that. Those thousands of people can come and be retrained and work alongside the action part of the process, which will get it done a lot quicker, and it will get that slush of money back where it should be, and the person who did the action and was responsible for that risk in the first place gets his or her hands and knuckles wrapped. So it speeds everything up, because we've got this mentality at the moment where, and I'm not just picking on the legal sides, it's the same with banking sectors and a lot of other sectors, where we want everything now, and when we get it and something goes wrong, that takes a long time, because there's lots of due diligence and process to go through and everything else. If a section of that could be automated to make that quicker, your law firm's going to look better, your trademark's going to be even more valuable, you as an advisor are going to be worth twice as much. This is where a lot of people are really missing the point. Now, if you do that, and then you've got the whole lot sitting on blockchain technology where it can settle those cases financially because the smart contract can be written thus. You've got a really, really excellent ecosystem that is so blooming secure. I can't think of anything out there at the moment that is better than that. We've got databases all over the place. We've got cloud systems all over the world. They're good, but what happens if the entity goes under? You know, we could wake up tomorrow and Amazon could go under. We don't really know if it would be tomorrow.
Or he suddenly decides, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm pulling the plug, and everybody's left in lurch.
You know,
his vision in the end. At the end of the day, his prerogative. He can say, "I'm fed up with this. I'm doing something completely different. I'm going to live in the Amazon forest instead."
And the counter argument could be, "Why would you want to do that?" And his other argument might be, "I want to get on a ship and spend time in Mars." We don't know. Is it likely? At the moment, probably not. We don't know. We do not know what's going to happen in 2 minutes, let alone 10 years, 20 years, whatever. None of us have got that fortune-telling capacity that's dead balls on accurate. I look at things of, yeah, but what if? What if it happens? What if they have a change of heart? Because they do. Companies rewrite terms and conditions. They do it all the time. They'll run it for a period and then something better will come along and they have to rewrite it. Replace terms and conditions with blockchain technology. And that's really how that works. So you can write a program that will facilitate that and sit and organize it and everything else. It records every single sequence of events. So you've got a nice, clear, transparent line. It's immutable. No one can mess around with it. So once it's done, it's done. That is the future. That's the way that the world is heading. It's not just going to be for the trademark set. It's going to be probably anything that you'll come across. You can tokenize things now, and that's going to get bigger. You'll have tokenized trademarks. It's coming because they're already looking at copywriting and patents on a token. Why is that going to be a benefit?
I actually attended what's it called, a WIPO event yesterday about respecting copyright in the online world, and it was mainly about these piracy website where you can watch films and they've been put up illegally, and I couldn't help asking, would the blockchain help in this case? I don't know. I'm just curious about this. And so they actually had a little conversation about that. So it was really, really interesting for me, you know, because every time, because I'm talking to you and I'm getting influenced by you and I can see there are some advantages to it, you know, the smart contract and all that. That's why I keep asking these questions whenever I participate in these events, you know, where there are people who are solicitors, lawyers, whatever you want to call them. I just find it really interesting because that way they get prodded by somebody. I may not know what you know, but I know a little and I can see some advantage to it. So that's why, you know, I always try to prod a little bit to see what can we do? Can we speed this up, change the legislation? What?
There's three areas with blockchain technology that you get. So you've got adoption. We're still waiting for the mass adoption. That's called the network effect. So once everyone's on the network, then it will be just normal. But what you will suffer is speed if you've got a lot of people on there. So it may slow things down. But if that's the way that it's got to be, so you've got security and adoption, but it's not quick, there are some companies that are trying to have all three sides of the triangle. Ethereum's one of them. So Ethereum blockchain is quicker than Bitcoin, but Ethereum is slower than Solana and Cardano and a few others, which is where most of the NFTs are being run at the moment. Most are on Ethereum, but there's these other subsets as well. Now, what you've got to understand is even when you've got a load of websites open on your computer, as your computer gets older, it starts to slow down. It's like us as humans, we do. It gets tired out, there's new technology comes in, and for a while it starts to go really well, and then it starts to go back, and you think, oh God, what do we do? Luckily with computers, you turn it off and on again, it tends to sort of get rid of whatever was there and all the rest of it. But with blockchain, if people want security, and if people
do, you know, I want security for my clients, and I can see the advantage of having the trademark on the blockchain because it will be easier to monitor. It will be an immutable contract, which I quite like. So for me,
the fact that you can see it and look at it. So there's the transparency bit. The fact that it's secure. The bit you'll lose is, oh, it was on a cloud system that I found quite fast. This is slow. Well, all right, what's more important for you? If you need speed, go back to the cloud, use it. To me, especially when it's something valuable like a company, someone's home, an idea that's just about to go to patent or what have you, that to me, you've got to keep that secure. Now, the counter argument is, well, if you can see what's inside blockchain, isn't that a bit dangerous? Well, no, because you can't actually see what the thing is, but you just see a line of code that represents, I don't know, I've invented a self-cleaning dustbin or something like that. All my stuff will be behind that firewall. You won't be able to look at it and pull the documents out because I won't let you. Because that is how you can write into the smart contract how that would work. So you can go, I want people just to view this, and I want certain other people with this coding can go in and add things to it, which would create another link to the chain and so on. So that's basically how blockchain would work. So it will continue doing it forever and a day until such times when you put it into a different direction. So if you had a revised contract, sometimes nowadays you can amend it, put it on. With blockchain, you have to rewrite it and put it on again. So it takes longer, which means there's technical people that will be doing that for you. The long and short of it is it's much, much more secure than any other database system that I'm aware of at the moment. Now, I'm not tech, but I do understand the features and benefits of blockchain, but I also understand some of the negatives that people will pull up on. And the speed is one of them. With your industry sector, in terms of what you provide, I mean, the coverage is, it can be any business basically, can't it, from A to Z. The problems I can see with the system at the moment is what happens if someone gets fired or leaves under a cloud and can do something destructive the day he or she's been kicked out the door, because people do that. If you've got limited access to it because it's on blockchain, that won't happen. So again, it gives you even more security. And yes, I know that there's password protections and bits and pieces like that. I saw a video a little while ago. The average time it takes to crack a password is about 30 seconds, however good they are. And that's scary.
Yeah.
And people will go on about, I have the safest, securest system in the world. Well, how do you know? Oh, because someone told me, the company that we're buying. Well, they would. That's one of their USPs. Because blockchain has not got one entity in charge of it, there are a group of nodes underneath it. When I say group, hundreds of thousands of them. You will never get that situation. I watched a video a while ago about a guy who's very versed on Bitcoin, and he turned around, was asked a question about what happens if the government stop it. This is the UK government. If the government stopped it and designed their own, how would that expose you then? He said it wouldn't. And he explained for 2 minutes solidly why. Basically, his reply was, they don't have the technology, they don't have the staff, they don't have the finance to do it, because by the time they got to that point, the coin would have moved on and been worth more anyway. So the system is extremely clever and designed for that reason. It will always be one step ahead. Yeah, there's people trying to catch up and they haven't caught up, and they've been working on it for 15 years. Factor that into your industry, your whole cycle of things. That's where I see personally how it can help.
It might actually help with the fact that after a certain time period, like in America, you have to provide proof of use after 5 years.
Yes.
Whereas that's not needed over here. You have to use your trademark, otherwise we can't uphold it. You have to renew it after a 10-year period. It's not very expensive to renew, but I can see that might not be needed with the blockchain, because it's on the blockchain. So, I mean, if you want a different iteration of your trademark, because people do that. If I wanted this to be pink rather than blue, then I would have to register it again. So that would just be another iteration of my mark, but I wouldn't need to do the same. I mean, people can still revise whether or not they want it after that 10-year period. Then if they do not want it, they could just scrap it.
That's interesting. So when it gets to the renewal period, how does that get flagged up? How do you know, for instance, when yours is ready?
I get flagged up by the Intellectual Property Office.
Right. So how do
as the professional handling, say, your trademark, they would contact me and say,
I get that. How do they know when to get hold of you? How does that bit work?
Because there is a timestamp on it. You know, the protection starts from the day you file.
Yeah.
So they have that timestamp, and that would probably be even stronger on the blockchain because it's completely immutable. You have the human error the way the system is right now.
Really?
Of course you do.
Wow. So someone could forget. If it was Joe Smith's job at wherever in America, let's use that as an example, and Joe Smith was off ill or even worse, died, it could get overlooked, and all right, someone would pick it up at some point. So it's really down to a database somewhere that sends a message to someone to say, chase this up, it's due for renewal. There's probably software that's written nowadays that would, sort of automate that part. Now, the way that blockchain would work, if they wanted it to work, would be to carry on like that. But instead of it sending a message to the someone to get hold of the person that was holding the trademark or the organization, they could miss that middle person out and go straight to source, whilst that middle person's doing something much more productive. Because let's face it, getting hold of someone and saying, you need to do this, here's an email, here's all the bits and pieces, isn't a great use of someone's time. They can be doing other things like helping clients get on and helping you and all the rest of it. So that can be written right from the early stage as a smart contract and initiated straight away. So what they would get, instead of, I don't know whether they get a certificate when a trademark's issued or not, they would have that still visibly, right? But they would also have a piece of code, which would be, so that would be behind the scenes, and sitting in front of it would be a digital code, because that's all they would see. And the reason they code it is so people can't see what's behind, but when you've got access to that code, of course you can. So all those bits and pieces can be written into it. So you could have a situation where I have a trademark that you've issued for me. I can't change. I mean, why would I want to change it? I wouldn't want to change it, but I can open it up and see it and show people. So people that haven't got the blockchain technology, I could send them a PDF or whatever. So I could do that. I could have my solicitor that's enabled to do that if I wished, or a family member, etc., until such times when I change that. There's probably, as I say, an automated system at the moment that does it with what you're using. But blockchain takes that little bit of humanization out, because you could have it work on a smart contract where that would all be done for you, freeing up people's time. And I'll come back to that a lot as well. We're running out of time. We've never got enough hours in the day. We'll take people off that and get them to do something more productive, helping other people. Getting hold of them by whatever sources and giving them reminders and so forth, and manually doing that, that's not good. That's not good for anyone. No one wants that. We want to speak to people about, I've got this bit of business for you, or I need something changed. Can you give me some advice and guidance and so forth? Yeah, again, using AI, you can get some of the steps, but you will not get the person with the knowledge like you that will say, right, as I see it, this is what you need. This is what you need to provide. This is what we look at. This is how it will go together. And you will talk them through all the steps. Once you finish, get the AI system to chuck out the automated emails so they've got that in front of them. And that's really how I see things going forward. And if that speeds up transactional stuff, even if the system's slower than what you're using, that's got to be a benefit, because cash in equals cash flow, positive. We all want positive cash flow. Yeah. And part of the problem is people in the middle that are stopping that, because they don't know any different.
I still see that it can be an advantage for the trademark industry that you have the mark sitting on the blockchain, because no, you can't see maybe the details behind it, but you can see the trademark is there, and it gets difficult to infringe upon because it's on the blockchain. So can it be coded in a way that something that is confusingly similar will be rejected, do you think?
Probably. The blockchain doesn't make the decision. It will be something like AI that will, all blockchain will do, it's a database, right? Mm-hmm. And it has courses of action behind it that will make things work. So the banking sector, for instance, when you go in and say, look, I'm thinking of applying for a loan or a mortgage, the process that they do now is they ask you certain questions, that gets fed into AI, and that in part helps make the decision for the person that will actually go, yes, you can have it, or no, you can't. There's two answers. That will then, those actions will then get recorded on blockchain. Now, if you're looking at blockchain with an NFT, where you've got the smart contract, that's the bit. The smart contract will do what it's told to do. So if it says, this is not a good example for your sector, but if it says, I have a trademark and I want to sell it, I don't know whether that's at all possible, but if it was, the route would be you put it on a market, someone would buy it, etc., etc. But the way that a smart contract can do is it will get filtered onto like a platform like OpenSea, for argument's sake. Someone will pick it up and it gets all the transactions tidied and sent in the right direction. So that's how it would work for there. But making a decision on whether something is a legitimate claim, if that's the right term to use, or not, at the moment, it wouldn't really do that. But you would need to rely on things like a certain amount of human input, artificial intelligence to help. the blockchain would validate it. That's basically what it does. So it would go, right, here's all the records. So if someone comes back later and says, I want to challenge or dispute that, you can go, well, it's over there. Just click this thing and there it all is. So that's how blockchain would benefit there. Again, there's probably something that you use currently, some database that's held on a cloud storage somewhere or other. That's fine. And it may work quicker. But sure as eggs, it won't be as secure. And you're dealing with people's assets here. And it's obviously a huge deal. So that's where I see blockchain, because it's purely about, when I use the word transaction, you asked me a question a little while ago about what's these tokens all about when we talk about ChatGPT. Tokens equal transaction. Transaction in IT talk can be anywhere from inputting text on a Word document to sending an email. The action of sending an email from A to B, that's a transaction. We don't pay for it unless we pay for our emails, of course. But when you do Hotmail to Hotmail, we don't pay for it. But they've got our data, they sell our data, we've agreed to the T's and C's and blah, blah, blah. So everything does come at a cost. Whether it's monetary or not doesn't really come into the thing. But the fact that the whole purpose of blockchain technology is to really sort of look after everything. It's where the database will live, and it's where things get validated. So we were talking about AI at the top of the hour in terms of strange videos that can come out, impersonations of people's voices. Well, there are people on the planet that do that and make a good living out of it. You know, Robin Williams was the case in point. But on a serious note, what blockchain could do is could help working with technology like AI to make that a little bit more honest and a little bit more, listen, you can't do that as such. But it won't make that decision, but it will be programmed to keep the records of when that's done. So that's how it works. Does that help?
Yeah. And you did mention something about selling trademarks. That does happen the whole time, doesn't it? Because if you suddenly decide that whatever you have created this business and suddenly you're fed up, like we were speaking about Amazon, and suddenly Jeff Bezos decides he's completely fed up with it, he can either pull the plug or he can sell it to somebody else. And in the case where he sells it, if it's on the blockchain, you will have the smart pop my tongue back in again. You will have the smart contract in place. And when you have a registered trademark with that, that gives it more value. That's why people have trademarks, because they know and understand that when they're building their company up and they're building their reputation up, having a trademark that protects their intellectual property makes it more valuable. If you do not have a registered trademark, the goodwill connected to your business will be registered as nil, zero, zilch, nothing. So that affects the price. So when you have that and you're selling the trademark and it's on the blockchain and the business is on the blockchain, it will probably be a safer transaction.
Yeah.
But in that situation, people do due diligence as well. Yeah. They need to they need to know what it is that they're taking on. They need to know the risk, as we were speaking about earlier as well. So they're having some of it on the trademark. I meant the blockchain might actually facilitate this situation or make it easier, or whatever you want to call it, to make it a smoother transition, I imagine. What do you think?
Yeah. Look at McDonald's. You wrote a great piece this morning. I love that. And it was really piqued my interest. I worked for the company for 5 years. So every time I went into the stock room, every time I went into the freezer, every time I went into the walk-in cooler, I saw register, trademark everywhere, the boxes. So on a Big Mac box, on the quarter pounder with cheese, you know, they don't call it a cheese quarter pounder. It's a quarter pounder with cheese. They're very specific about what they do. They don't sell chips, they sell French fries, or they call them fries now. You know, all these bits and pieces, and it was drummed into me. We have to tell people exactly what it is that they're buying if they don't word it in certain ways. I don't know so much about it now. I'm going back a long, long time. And it made sense after a while. It took a little bit for me to drop, but I thought, right, that's why all these cups have got RTM or whatever it was that was on it. That's why this, that's why that. And it makes a lot of sense. Now, McDonald's now and Starbucks are doing this, Gucci and a few others. They're getting into NFTs. So there was a product a few years ago. It keeps drifting in and out of the UK. It's called a McRib. And they've launched the McRib as an NFT in the States, I think. And
how does that work? Isn't that something you eat?
Yes. But it's the brand, okay? So they'll do what's called an NFT drop to their customer base, right, through an app where people can download it, and it's just part of a brand exposure. Now, they've got
brand loyalty. Brand loyalty
as well. Tesco Club Card, that'll be another one. They'll get onto this. They all will. And once the big co's do it, because they've got deeper pockets than us, they've got more finance at hand, they can just do this, right? But once they do it, and it becomes more, I was talking about the network adoption earlier. Metcalfe's law is all about network adoption. Once one goes, it was like Facebook. Facebook started with one person, then a dozen, then 100, then 100,000, million, 100 million, billions now, yeah? That's where people go, it's a good idea to do it because someone else is doing it. I now understand that. We do this with everything, whether it's cars, whether it's paperwork, whether it's a pen that we like. We will follow someone. But very, very, very few of us are completely original. But
if it's technology that we like.
Yes, indeed, because it drives the world. All the tech companies that are out there, the biggest, I think the top 20, there's about 15 of them are tech firms, like global entities that are really, really valuable. So pick on the biggest ones, Apple, if it's still up there, or Microsoft, Google, whoever. They will drive products and systems to us to say, yeah, you need this now because it's better than what was before because we've evolved. And McDonald's are doing this now because they're going, right, we've got intellectual property, we've got physical property, we've got a brand that's massive, we want to protect it, but we also want to keep the momentum going. I know what, NFTs are really cool at the moment. The kids will understand that because a lot of them are gamers as well. They know about tokens, tokenization. I could go on and on and on. So they're doing that. Starbucks are doing that. I wouldn't be surprised if Pizza Hut are doing it. I used to keep up with all this, but I'm way, way, way behind stuff like that. Pizza Hut will do it. You'll get it in Tesco's, Asda, Walmart are doing things like this, you know, because it's easy. It's easy. It's digital. It's quick. So there it's out there. Used to get tons of adverts. Used to get tons of emails and texts. They used to text back in the day. I remember when I was working, they would text certain environments. But, you know, that's time consuming now. So we're in this true digital world where even, and I'll be surprised if this doesn't happen, even entities like Lloyd's of London, where they still work round, when I was last inside that building, with stacks of paperwork, eventually that's going to go. It has to, because it's not secure. I could walk past that place, not saying I would, and quite easily go, I could work out a way to bomb this place if I really wanted to. It'd be the most destructive thing that will happen globally, right? I won't, but I could do that. What would they do with all that paperwork? Now, someone smart might think, yeah, but they've got copies of it elsewhere. Well, that's dangerous as well. Stupid, but they have to because it's backup. So as things grow digitally, we're going to be thinking of more efficient ways of working. And that's been going on for probably 2 decades. Google's a case in point. It's a library. That's all Google is. It's a library.
You spoke about McDonald's. It's the interesting thing is when you ask McDonald's what it is that they do, they're in real estate.
They are.
People think that they're in burgers. They're not. They're in real estate. It's really interesting because people don't realize that it's real estate. For them, it's finding the best location for their business or their franchises.
This is how that works. So you've got a huge entity that you don't need to advertise because everyone knows of them, but they don't drop the ball. They're continually driving that process. Yeah. They franchise out, I think it's 75% of their business now to people that have worked there, that know how to do it, that will come in and self-fund it. They don't get a leg up. They don't get any of that. So they'll have to have a certain amount of money. It used to be £1 million, I think, and they'll get allocated a restaurant. And then they might get a second, third, fourth. I think they've got a maximum of 6. But whatever that scenario is now, they have to use all the same suppliers. They have to buy the meat from the same, the chips, fries from the same place, everything. It comes from the same place. So they're paying McDonald's for that privilege as well. Then they also have to buy Coca-Cola syrup. Now, this might have changed, but when I worked there first, McDonald's was, and probably still is, Coca-Cola's biggest client in the world. But they never paid for it. They never physically paid Coca-Cola for their syrup. And this is why. When you next go in there, if you do, look at the cup. It's got, you know, the M sign, and it'll have Coca-Cola on it, the cold cups. And that was the agreement. So Coca-Cola are getting free advertising. So they scratch each other's backs. Makes sense, right? But nowadays it might be completely different. You know, we've discussed this many times. Contracts can change from time to time. But just think about it. If the person that did that today died tomorrow and something had to happen quick, it would be quite a complex process. But if it was on blockchain, it'd be actually quite simple.
Yeah.
If it's NFT, just like that. Yeah. Just do a revised thing, put it on there, done. Because you only need to change a small element of it, get it passed, done. And that's where I see how the real value of blockchain technology with NFTs is going to work with contracts. Because that's what they are. They're a contract. Everything in life is a contract. Verbally,
yeah. Even you and me doing these together. Yeah. This is a contract. We haven't written anything down. No. It's a verbal agreement.
Yeah.
Either of us can pull out at any time without damaging the other person.
Yeah.
It's just a verbal agreement. We both honor it because we enjoy what we're doing.
Exactly. But if we were, let's go from the sublime to the ridiculous. If we were both human versions of an NFT, we couldn't buck that contract ever until there's a replacement put in place. So we would have the same thing going on. So I hope people that are watching this can understand that it can actually help with consistency as well. Because you've got that middleman out the way. And people, we've had it for so long. You know, you buy an asset or you start a company, and it's normally one or two people upwards that starts a company. So you've got factors there. You then want to get funding for it. So you go to a bank, you've got a third party involved. You can remove all this by doing it digitally. It's just not that it's been worldwide adopted yet, but that is going to come. That I do know, because that's a project I'm working on.
I know.
But if you have
a very interesting project too.
Oh, it's incredible. But if you have a business like that particular example that we've discussed, where they start up, they get rolling, and they haven't bothered to trademark or anything like that, massive exposure. I would just nick their idea. I see it on Dragon's Den every week. I watched it last night. I watch it every Thursday. And you get these people that are clever, because at least they've got a patent in place. All right, they're early stages and so forth. But eventually, when Levi Roots was on the scene and he came out with that reggae sauce that went mad, that'll be trademarked now. I'll be surprised if it's not, because the likes of Sainsbury's and all the supermarket brands are selling. Uncle Ben's rice. Manda Jaffrey, was it? The Indian chef. All those chefs, Jamie Oliver, Lloyd Grossman, extremely valuable now because...
And Jamie Oliver has partnered with Tefel. So whenever he does anything, you know, he has got his own cooking and kitchen range, and all of that is Jamie Oliver / Tefel. So that, you know, the really intelligent ones find influences, because Jamie Oliver has big influence. Let's not discount that.
Gordon Ramsay,
they have seen the value of what he does, and they wanted to partner up. And this is I find that really intelligent when people have brands like that, you know, and they can see the value of it, and then they do something together, and it lifts it even higher up.
Well, this is the thing. You've got the other chap, the Chinese fellow. Is it Ken Walk?
Don't know.
I'm trying to think of his surname, but he's got an association, I think, with Tefal as well, with their woks. He'll come at me. I can't think of his bloody name now, but you know, years and years and years ago, way before Lloyd Grossman's time, and going back to the likes of, we had you may or may not know of Celeste. We had a cook on here called Fanny Craddock. She was really sort of iconic and everything, but I'm talking like 70s, 60s, maybe 50s.
Yeah, I wouldn't be aware of that because I lived in a different country then.
So, and you'd have had an equivalent in Denmark. There would have been one in the States, wherever it is. These people wouldn't have even thought about what the likes of Jamie Oliver, Gordon Ramsay, those really high level, well-known chefs are doing. They wouldn't have thought that because it wasn't there. The opportunity wasn't there. And again, this is down to the evolvement of technology, which is helping industries like, again, going back to what you do, trademarks and all the other bits and bobs. So they've now got even stronger cases to go to you and say, look, we want to trademark this. I mean, going back to McDonald's, it's not just about the brand; it's some of the products that they've got as well, where they want to protect it. Because the Coca-Cola story, it's all about that, isn't it? It's just really really incredible. It's fascinating how much detail is out there in terms of businesses wanting to move forward, but some people are making the mistakes of, I didn't do that and I got found out, and I didn't protect it and regret it.
If you go back to the roots of the McDonald's story, the two brothers that started it, they got completely taken over by, I can't remember, what's his name, Roy something or other?
Ray Kroc.
Ray, right, yeah, Ray, that was his name. Where they were like, but you can't have the name because that's ours. I'm sorry, guys, I've actually registered it as the trademark, so you can't use that anymore. And they didn't even realize the value of what they had created, which was why he was able to outmaneuver them completely.
Yeah.
So it's about being savvy and intelligent and understanding. I have something really magnificent and unique, and it has the potential to make a big impact somewhere. Doesn't matter what it is. It can be fast food chain, it can be medicine, can be fashion. They understand the value of what they've created, and so they protect it. That's so important to understand, I feel.
It is. And as you were talking, I was thinking of companies that have got either a first or second name in their business. My namesake, the McCall group that are retailers, there's one. You've got WH Smith's, Johnson and Johnson, huge entities like these. There's estate agents that are a person's first and second name that have been registered and things like that. The list goes on and on and on. So it's not just these oddities that are like HSBC or Barclays. There'll be lots and lots of other areas where people have got the idea's out, it's now on paper, digitally or not, and they're working with it, and all of a sudden they've got a lovely problem to go, right, we need to protect it now. Because if they don't, and someone comes along that tries to do what the NFT guy did and succeeds, and before you know it, you've had your business wiped out from beneath your feet.
Fortunately for Hermes, that's such a big company, so for them it's just a matter of setting all their solicitors on the case, and it gets solved. And in their case, in their favor, it might have gone the other way.
Yeah.
Imagine what would have happened then. It would have been devastating for them.
I used to be along this line of, too big to fail. And then the banking crisis happened, and I saw Lehman's go, and I thought, that's not really true. And I came home from work, and I was on a phone call to my father, and I mentioned this too big to fail thing, and he said, listen, go and look at a bit of history. Go back to the 1600s. I was like, right, where's he going with this? He said, there was the Dutch Indian Company. They were massive. I said, how much were they worth? He said, when I last looked at it, it was something like $8.5 trillion in 1600. They went bust before the 1700s. So too big to fail. There's no company that's bigger than Apple, Google, Microsoft, and Tesla put together. Bigger. And they're no longer with us. I'm not sure what went wrong there. I haven't bothered to really look deeper into it, but there's an example where that stupid thing, too big to fail, doesn't apply. Of course, it can. Anything can fail. If you take your foot off the ball, it's going to roll away. Don't trap it and keep it within your confine. And that's what your product does perfectly with, you know, the right application, the right situation. Because I remember when we spoke, I can't remember if it was this week or the week before, where you explained that sometimes what you provide and offer isn't actually applicable to every single source that comes by. There'll be exceptions where either they're not ready yet, or it's not something that you can do. And what I like about you is you're transparent. You'll tell them that.
Yeah. If I feel that I can't register your trademark, I'm not going to waste your time, money, and energy. I'm not willing to just take your information and throw it into the machine and see if it sticks. You know, that's not who I am. It's not what I want to do. And that's because I have this unbroken record of every single trademark that I have submitted has been accepted. And you said, well, that's going to fail one day. And I said, no, because I'm not willing to let it. I can sleep and I can look you in the eye and know that I've treated you with respect and integrity. And that is important to me.
It's all about the know, like, and trust, isn't it? And that's what you've clearly demonstrated, because I don't know if this has happened, and I hope it hasn't, but maybe you'll give me an example where it has, where you've declined doing something for someone because you felt it wasn't right, you couldn't do it, or what have you. Has it ever happened where you've said no to someone and the someone has gone elsewhere and got it?
I wouldn't necessarily know. I know I spoke to someone a while back, and I said, look, I don't think I can register this as a trademark for you. And they then said, well, I'll go elsewhere then. And I said, fine.
So I
can't stop someone from doing that, you see. That's not my job either. No. You know, if they want to go to somebody else and see if they can throw it in and see if it sticks, that's fine. I'm not willing to do that.
I'm wondering, you know, whether the individual that approached you, if it was, went somewhere else and got it and has come back and said, oh, but mind you, if they did, you would have told me that aspect. But I used to get this in insurance.
They haven't come back to me and told me whether they got it registered or not. I do not know.
I would implicate then that's probably not happened. They probably haven't got it, because I was in regulation in insurance, and there would be a job or two that I would go, we won't cover that. Well, aren't you going to look at it? No, I know we won't cover it, but thanks anyway. I'll look at other opportunities. Shook hands, went away. And the person come back to me later on. This happened to me 3 times. Come back to me later and said, I got cover. I went, yeah, and I can tell you who from, because I knew it was in their skill sets, not ours. So it's a slight variation on what you do, but sometimes people can spin things around, get what they actually need or require or want, or all of the above, and action it. And they come back and are pleased to tell you this. Oh, yeah, I've got it. Thinking that they're cleverer than you and everything else. But what I said to this particular character, and it was actually him and 2 associated businesses, I said, yeah, but I told you where to look anyway, and that's all you've done. You've gone back and looked at the place. I said, yeah, go there because they will cover it. We don't. We don't cover that risk. And that's just knowledge of product. That's knowledge of not just mine, but other people's. And with what you do, if you can only look at what's put in front of you, and if you've been given the information and something stinks and you can't do it, and you've told them that, or you won't do it, whatever way around it goes, that's nice because you're honest, you're transparent, and fine. If they go somewhere else that might be a bit slacker or might bend rules or what have you, I don't know enough to sort of qualify what they might or might not do, but I'm just making some sort of stabs out there. Then yeah, they might get it go through. But if there's a problem, they've got that problem to deal with. But at least with you, because you've never had any track records unblemished, that's a good reason to use you.
Yeah,
it's that know, like, and trust again.
And also, you know, there are people who just they register their own trademark because they have figured out either how to do it, or they don't even want to ask somebody like me to do it for them because they're looking to save their pennies, and that's fine. But then suddenly they have a rejection. They may, you know, I've spoken to someone who has more than one trademark and they registered all of them themselves, and then all of a sudden one of them got rejected and they don't understand why. I will know why, but I'm not going to tell them why, because, that's part of why I do what I do. And so I'm not going to give all my trade secrets away.
Yeah.
But I will understand why something's been rejected. I also registered a trademark for someone in Denmark. It was a success, and then they wanted to register another one, and they did it themselves, and it was rejected, and they didn't understand why either. And it's like, yeah, well, you don't have my knowledge. That's why. You don't know what is required. You don't understand what is required. That's why they reject it. They will tell you why it's rejected, but if you don't understand what they mean by what they say, then you won't be any the wiser. And what has happened is you've wasted time, money, and energy, all of three that you can never have back. And these are three highly, highly valuable assets, by the way. Time, once a minute's gone by, once this conversation that you and I are having has come and gone, we cannot have the time that we spent together anew. It's not possible. The money that you put into the trademark system, you cannot get it back. I also have a no refund policy because I will have done work for you.
Yeah.
So I will have performed, but that's why I do not register things that I can't, that if I think that I can't register it, I'd much rather not have your money in the first place.
I heard a brilliant analogy of time ages ago. I've never forgotten this. And you said three of them. So if you write the word time down, so Time, a boss of mine, he's sadly no longer with us. He said, well, the T part stands for time. I went, right. The I is input. I went, right. The M is money. And the last bit is energy. That's what time is. And I went, that's bloody brilliant. He said, well, it's obvious. And to some people it is. It wasn't to me at the time, but it is now looking back on it.
Yeah.
And as you were talking about that, I was thinking about whether it was appropriate to ask you what would be a typical example of when a trademark can't be, where you can't get one. But I don't want you to give too many secrets away, because that's obviously why people go and speak with you.
So one of the things, if it's generic, I can't register it.
Yeah.
That's very simple. And there's a reason for that, because not everything can or should be registered as trademarks. And I keep saying this over and over and over again, because if everything was registerable as trademarks, we would not be able to have a normal conversation.
Correct.
Which would be a pain in the behind.
Yeah.
So that's why you can't just have everything become trademarks, because it's not practical. And it's the uniqueness and the exclusivity that we protect. We give you an exclusive right to your uniqueness and your creativity, and what we're also doing is we're rewarding you for this, because you can charge more for whatever it is that you do once you have a registered trademark. McDonald's can set the price for how much they require from somebody who wants to take on a franchise from them. That's because they've built up the value of their brand and their trademark. They don't understand this. And that guy, Ray, he understood that so swiftly, much more swiftly than the other two guys did.
Well, this is the other thing, or maybe the other two guys also understood it. And this is the question I want to ask you. I can turn around and say to you, Celeste, I'm going to Dyson my floor. What do you mean by that? Well, actually, I've got a Dyson. I'm going to vacuum it. Yeah, vacuum is a generic phrase. We know that. The old way of saying it, as we discussed the other day, is I'm going to hoover it. Well, technically, I'm not really supposed to say that. And I understand that. So if I was to turn around and say to my kids, look, I'm going to McDonald's, but I don't actually mean the restaurant McDonald's. I've got a friend who's got a surname of McDonald's. That's probably what the McDonald's brothers thought. Well, it's a generic surname. He's never going to get that through, and just took their foot off the gas. And somehow,
I don't think they even were aware of it. And I'm only saying this because I've seen the film called The Founder.
Yeah.
I do not think that they were even aware that could be. Not. They just thought that this is our surname, and that's always going to be ours. No, and you have another example. Karen Millen, she was designing clothes, and she probably, I can't remember the exact details of the case, but she cannot use her own name anymore for designing clothes. There's a clothes designer in Denmark, Benedikte Utzon. She can't use her name Benedikte anymore. She's had a court case from the Supreme Court of Copenhagen stipulate that on social media, when she is selling her clothing, she can't use her birth first name. She has to use a different one. So just be careful.
Yeah.
You know, because something may happen. And in her case, it was a business that went bust, and she didn't receive any legal advice in the situation. Nobody asked her, do you want to buy this back? Well, they did ask her, do you want to buy this back? And nobody said anything because she didn't know me at the time. I would have said, well, you know, yeah, okay, 20,000 Danish kroner is a good deal of money when you've just gone bust. But if you want to keep doing what you're doing, there's a good reason to buy it back, you know?
Yeah. I was just looking up Karen Millen because my other half's dad, I think he knows her or someone. In fact, there's a distant relation going on, and he told me that story as well. We've come towards the end now. We've been talking trademarks and emerging tech, and kind of put a lot of our thoughts in a perspective, hopefully. So yeah, I just want to thank you for asking me on again. It's always a pleasure to chat and go through some bits and pieces. And
I want to thank you for saying yes.
Thanks a lot.